what is it, 18 minutes past 8 here this morning if you want to get in touch with us on WhatsApp 0879 180 180. We've been talking about the future of sport all week, and I think we're going to continue talking about this now for the next few months until we get some consensus about it. All inspired by what's going on in New Zealand, where they're trying to restore the notion that fun is the main part about participating in sport, and that if we lose that and if we continue to adopt the win at all cost mentality, then people are going to continue to drop out. And what's the point if everybody drops out? So to that end, I'm delighted to say we've got Diarmuid Lyng with us for a general catch-up. Before we get into all that stuff, Diarmuid, congratulations on your high-profile transfer move. You were making waves. You're hurling in Kerry now.
The big winter move, Ger. Yeah. It's hard to know how to even approach it. It's not. It's obviously there's a global shutdown in sport, and so any story maybe will do. I want to play. I definitely just want to play again, and it doesn't look like I can get too far up the road anymore. So if I can get into Tralee to play, I'll certainly take that. But it doesn't, like. There's kind of one life, one club. Like you feel these things in the GA, like these maxims, and you feel like it's something that you stay kind of loyal to or true to or whatever. And then there's just sometimes you have to move because the game, you just want to play the game,
I was driving the other day and had Radio Carry On, and you were third story on the sports news, Diarmuid.
I mean, yeah. The lads seem the Parnells really seem to be kind of. I don't know, like down in Kerry, the landscape is so different in terms of hurling and what we've been used to. So it's really just I don't know. I don't know. It's not anything. It's not necessarily a big thing for me. Like when I think about hurling, I think about St Martin's. I think about Wexford. That's the area that when I feel the game, like that's what I feel. And nothing has happened yet. I haven't been to a train station. I haven't been to a game. I don't know any of the lads. So it hasn't been a thing yet for me. So hopefully I can get in and play some games. I had a daughter 2 weeks ago. So that's going to put manners on me and my ability to head off for 3 or 4 hours into Tralee to play a game of hurling. But I'm looking forward to it.
You obviously wanted to play. I think this is it's actually at the centre of all of the stuff that we want to talk about, really, is like that desire to just play and have fun and commune, as opposed to, and look, maybe you want to compete, maybe you want to, you want to play as well as you can do. You were like a natural competitor anyway, but you're not going there to win a Kerry championship necessarily, but just to actually enjoy the weight of the ball in your hand again. Yeah,
that's about the size of it. I mean, I think with all of this conversation, Jordan, and we've talked about this a few times before, there is a role as I feel it, as I see it, there's a role for competition in this conversation about the future of sport. I mean, there has to be, because it seems to be something that's quite instinctive to a certain amount of us, maybe not to everybody. And there has to be the conditions, I think, will always exist where people with a natural sense of competition will gravitate towards a team sport where there's a little bit of chaos and the aim of the game is to win. I mean, and I think that's fine. Where it becomes problematic and where it has become increasingly problematic in Ireland is around, I mean, globally, whatever, in just focus on Ireland, and maybe the games that we know here, like in the GA, you would say that it gets when it gets locked up with, when that need to win gets locked up and locked in around identity, it becomes very problematic for fellas. And then we begin to see, the narrative of having to hate the fella up the road who's playing the same game, and that's what defines our area, is our hatred of these people up the road, or whatever the different trappings of the win at all cost philosophy that drive people out of their natural rhythm. I mean, that's really kind of that's what we're trying to resolve a little bit. The fun side of it, I think, comes in a little bit more naturally then, because it's interesting. I created a game. The GA are addressing this, and I think around the world, the problem facing sporting organisations is dropout, and so the organisations essentially have to resolve this problem, and then we in the media have to have conversations about it. But I suppose I feel like the responsibility, the little bit of an anarchist in me feels like we have to sort this problem out in ourselves first, and what we consider play to be and what we consider the commons to be. And it seems to me anyway that there is less and less places we can go socially because of insurance and because of land ownership where we can actually just play. And so it becomes this very defined, well, the GA club is a place, or the soccer field is a place, or the rugby field is a place where you can play. And I would totally reject that and hope going forward that we reject that, because I think we should be able to play anywhere. I think there should be games of hurling on the beach. I think it should be in farmers' fields. I think we can shut off traffic on a road in the middle of a town and play a game of hurling. I think that these things can be possible when we have shifts in ourselves enough to realise that actually play is probably more fundamental to us than doing business is. And that's where they're more, maybe they're wilder ideas, but sure, of course, that's what I'd probably arrive at.
Yeah, well, beach hurling sounds like we should be trying to get it in the Olympics, except not competitive.
We started doing it in the summer, and one of the things, so this is where the nuts and bolts of it then shift, because when the aim of your game is to play to win, then in the tackle you play to win, and you tackle to win. And it's not about the other person who you're tackling, it's about you. And it's about you getting the ball to get it to somebody else in your team to score. When you play a little bit more, when you play allowing for your community, when you play allowing for women playing with you, when you play allowing for children playing with you, when you play with people who have never played the game before, and you try and allow for those people to play the game with you, and yet still not get the same enjoyment out of it. What I have found is that if you tackle, for example, if I come to somebody in a tackle and I know that they've been playing for 6 months and I'm playing for all of my life, the responsibility falls to me in the tackle to tackle with that knowledge, with that deeper and greater awareness, because that's what I have. And it's with me that responsibility is. And my responsibility is to the person that I'm tackling. And what I'm saying to them is, I'm not giving you a free ride because you're not going to learn anything by that. But I am going to give you enough space that you learn and you grow. And all of that's happening in a split second, but that's the responsibility that you have as the better player. And when everybody takes that attitude, or when that attitude is adopted as kind of one of the rules of the game, replacing a win at all costs mentality in the game, you can see the improvements that people make. You see the joy that they experience in making the improvements. And it's just, I couldn't even begin to explain to like people down here in West Kerry who've never held a hurl before, after an hour on the beach of playing, and the sense of satisfaction and the sense of joy and the sense of gratitude that they have, not only to you for organising it, but to everybody else around them for taking part in it, is it's spectacular, you know. So that's why I'm the organisation have a responsibility, and they're tackling it very, very well. And I just heard last week we were on with Colin Regan, Colin Kills, a few of the clubs that were on were talking about the social games and the benefit that it has been, particularly in the lockdown. And it's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. One of the things that came up was really interesting was around the coaches who were our parents themselves, and they went back in to play this social game. And when the game was starting, like, they kind of organised a match against another social team, and I guess less high stakes than the normal games that are there. But everybody in the dressing room got nervous before, like the jerseys were laid out, and it was kind of done a little bit seriously. And our man, the coach, the guy who was guiding the team, wanted them to feel this, and they came in, they saw it, and they got a little bit of butterflies, and they were like, well, Ginny, I don't know, do I want to play in this anymore? And he was saying, right, that feeling there, that's nervousness. That's what 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds, that's what they feel before every game, before training sessions. They feel a little bit of nervousness coming into a dressing room with a load of, with 20 other people to have to go out and play a game. And as a coach, you're 10 times better to know your own nervousness, to get a sense of what theirs is, to be able to interact with them. So small things like that, I think, open doors in how we empathize with our young people and the people around us in order to play in a particular way that I think is a little bit more sustainable than drive it as hard as you can, for as long as you can, as fast as you can. I don't think that's going to end well.
Yeah, it burns out people's love of the sport if it's always you know, like we got sold the whole self-improvement thing as a shtick from the 80s that exploded into a multi-billion dollar industry, and everybody wants to get better, but is getting better actually like crushing your opponent every single time? Probably isn't. Ultimately it probably isn't, because we all have to live together. Increasingly more of us on a increasingly less resources. Like, is there a way that we can use sport to be an accommodating thing that keeps 15, 17, 19-year-olds active?
Well, it's a tough one. Like, it's a tough one, because I think it's mirrored, as generally is the case in sport. It's mirrored in greater society at the moment, and you have the people who feel that competition is essential, and win at all costs philosophy is a natural aspect of the human condition, and the game must continue as it is. And anybody who says anything to the contrary has been overly feminized, or has been too impacted by their mothers, or is looking for a softer approach to life or something like that. And so the transition, as we kind of transition more over time into a game that is less, maybe less cutthroat, or maybe has less negative connotations when it comes to place and things like that, maybe there will be a little bit of something will come to the surface in that. You know, like we see that socially. People think, oh, well, you know, the polarization of society, or racism, things like these things are, they come to the surface when somebody like Donald Trump comes to presidency. But I think just when certain conditions come up, when certain topics of debate come up that everybody has to have, then those things come to the surface automatically, I think. And we will see people who feel that is a softening of the game. But from my experience, and this I think is probably the only thing or one of the few things that has real value, I feel, here, is because going to the top of the game in the way that we are encouraged to go to the top of the game, and the experience at the top of the game, well, I wasn't at the top, but I'm up around there somewhere, and looking around me at the fellas who are with me and playing against me. Certainly the most prescient thing amongst that whole experience that I can say is that there was a lack of joy. Now, that's not to say there wasn't joy. There certainly was joy, and people who won, lost, did brilliant things, did amazing things, had injuries, experienced different kinds of joys all along the way. There's no doubt about that, and there's no point in, you know, thinking that I'm saying something severe there. Of course there's joy, but could there be, is it possible that it wouldn't carry the tension, it wouldn't be weighing fellas down, it wouldn't be creating a kind of this notion of sacrifice, that we have to sacrifice to do this. Like, hang on there now, like, can we just roll this back a little bit? Stop training fellas 6 nights a week, clubs roll back, give lads a chance. And we talked about these things 3 or 4 years ago, Ger, and one of the things that always came up was, you can't change it. It's going forward. It's only going forward. It's only going more precise. And then coronavirus comes along, and yeah, you can change it. You know, you can. It can be changed. So I think as we begin to reimagine what our engagement with sport is like, which is what we have to do now, and it's all cards on the table. Like, you know, whoever wants to put forward the best ideas and the most sustainable ideas and the most reasonable ideas, that people will run with them. You know. So I think definitely that way was gone too extreme. For clubs and for county teams, that way was gone too extreme, and the feedback went back in through the GPA. The feedback came back from the players at inter-county level, and maybe the club is only going to get there in time anyway, where they say, look, at our freedoms can't be curtailed so much. The notion of not having a weekend off for 9 months, like fellas who are working, okay, they choose to do it, but do they need to choose? They'll choose to do it because they want to play, and they'll accept certain things because they want to play, because they have a real burning ambition to play. But do we need to take advantage of that? Do we need to hang their athletic identity over their heads and say, you can't play if you don't train all the time, and tell me where you are all the time, and wear all the same gear all the time, and sign this contract, and do this, and go here, and don't do this? I mean, what are we doing? Like, you know, to have a man say to another man, you can't go here. You know, like, I like that in the professional sports. They say, you can run 100 meters in 10 seconds on Saturday, and you can run 100 meters in 10 seconds the following Saturday. It's not really my business what you do in between. Now, here's a list of things you probably should be doing, but that's the responsibility, your output, you know, and how you are. So we've a huge opportunity to reimagine it, and I'm glad that this conversation has taken place at the likes of Pat on this week and plenty more besides, to have those conversations. So I was thinking about it last night, Ger. I mean, sometimes I feel my timing off the ball, like I think about the overall experience of it, or I think about individual experience of it, and at times it was a bit of a struggle. But there's one day I remember very, very clearly in what I would consider in a way my work off the ball, because which with you was heading off up to the park, the two of us in the gear, and moving back and forth and moving side to side and catching and blocking and missing and doing everything else, but playing hurling together is like a standout memory I have. Like, I can see the colours you're wearing. I can feel the movements in my body. Like, that's a standout moment. Now, we could have gone and had a coffee, and I don't think I'd really remember that. I mean, you're an interesting manager, but I just don't think I just don't think I'd remember it, because I was probably, I'd be going meeting people. That's a thing you do, you go meet people for a coffee, but it's quite unmemorable. But when you feel it in your body, and there's two people playing back and forth, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever it is, a WhatsApp group gets together and just plays wherever they want to. I mean, I feel it's I feel it's possible, it's feasible, and it's valuable.
That's remarkable. Like, I guess that's something that a lot of people would probably attach to their childhood as well, Diarmuid. That idea, if you had to pick out specific moments, you'd almost pick out the games you played as a kid easier than any other moments.
Yeah, I have. I mean, maybe Billy Rackard might have brought it back to me in with the title of his book, No Hurling at the Dairy Door. But I have one of my most distinct childhood memories is being at the dairy door in my mother's sister's place in Thomastown, Helen Farrell, whose sisters, whose daughters, Megan, Anna, and Shelley all play for the Kenny Camogie team, and Donjo played for the hurling team, and we would go up to their house, and I can remember being outside that door playing hurling for hours and hours, what seemed like hours and hours on end. Maybe it was only for an hour, but it doesn't matter. That kind of memory. And I think maybe that's something that we do, Owen, is it, like a lament for our childhood or something like that, like for those simpler times. But those experiences, I think those experiences can be created and recreated anew as 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds as well. That if we can just move into that sense of playfulness out of the serious work of who we are in the high street, of who we are in our jobs, of who we are in our relationships, and move into very sincerely and very genuinely, like just a timeless play. And that is what play, like that is what the big invite of play is, the opportunity to experience a flow state where you move out of your social mind, your worrying, your concerned, your whatever mind it is that you have into flow. Like that's the invite of sport, and not sport, but play. And so we're afraid of that. I think, to be honest, we're afraid of that flow state in a way. So we set the thing up in a way that has structures and systems and thinking, because the human condition is such that we just seem to be most afraid of that flow timelessness that is possible for us. So that's going maybe way out there, but
no, I think that's the whole point. I think that's because what we're saying is by forcing kids to drop out because we insist on only picking the best and forgetting the rest, is that we deny them the opportunity in their teenage years, the joy of going hurling. I remember that too. I've had a million coffees that I don't remember, but I absolutely remember that, and I lament the fact that I haven't done it with anybody since, and stupidly I haven't accessed that, right? But it's like it's precisely the removal of that from people in their 20s and 30s and the rest of their lives. We're saying, no, you can't have access to that, you can't do that, don't do that, because you weren't good enough in the first place. That's stupid. It's a really stupid thing for society to do. And I had a snowball fight with my kids at the weekend, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And they were shocked. They were absolutely shocked. And I was like, why are they so shocked? Do I not do this stuff with them enough? But clearly I don't. But there was that sense of like this being random and anarchic and who knows what's going to happen. And I don't know. I think that like the pure focus on elitism and the investment that we make in elite sport is the wrong way around. We should have a pure focus on investment in grassroots, and if elite stuff bubbles up from it, then support them on the way. But it's the fact that everybody's playing that's the glory of this, not the fact that some people can play brilliantly at the very top. They're great, and that's brilliant, and I'm delighted that you had that access to an elite career, and you were elite. but that doesn't define you. Ultimately, now it certainly doesn't. At this stage, it probably did when you were at that age. But wouldn't it be much better if 15,000 people of your age group had access to the same kind of whatever it was that brought you up? You would have bubbled up anyway, even if there'd been loads more people doing it around you. Maybe I got lost at the end of that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it was a nice little rant. I think that I don't know what will happen out of it. I suppose we just have to focus on the conditions that we think, the creation of the conditions that we think will allow for a greater participation and a greater joy. And what that looks like, I mean, we only know the elite model. Like American sport went the way that it went, you know, British sport, world sport, cricket, I suppose, maybe over in Asia, different places. Like sport has gone a certain way once it became commodified, and so we know it as an elite game. We know the inter-county game, or we know the Premiership, or we know the elite side of it. Again, like I think it's just a fear of what would it look like if it wasn't that? What would it look like if all of our time wasn't dedicated towards that? I mean, I have to think about here. I had lovely conversations with Owen about this, and I think that they're very worthwhile in the GA, and only in the GA context am I talking. I'm not saying rugby and soccer and other sports don't have the same possibilities, but in a GA context, if I am playing in, we'll say, on Gaeltacht, where maybe my child, you know, my little boy may want to play hurling soon, and or maybe football, and we go and we might start up a little small hurling team, or we might play a little bit of football, and he just the central focus of the experience is playing there. And I see then on Gaeltacht, I meet, you know, the 200 or 300 other people who go to the club. And I've chosen to be here, and they all feel the same, and they've chosen to be here. And the championship there's more investment in it, I suppose, in terms of energy, not in terms of money, but in terms of energy from the GA, and more centrally, there's more energy in the GA club and their focus at a local level. Then, you know, the championship down here is a more serious thing, maybe, and it's going to be there's a broader interest in it locally, and that makes me want to stay in this locality, or in my locality, or people all over the country in their locality a little bit more, because there's a little bit more meaning. They're not just cast aside to the very end of the season where it's run off in 6 weeks. So I think that the possibility is, but it's coming, of course, from the mindset that urbanization is a dangerous thing. Like, that's how I feel about that. So I think for there to be less of a movement from rural places into urban settings, like, I think overall that's a more beneficial strategy. I think the government would have different ideas, but I think when we're more populated out here, it gives meaning to areas, it gives meaning to places, it gives life to places, it gives culture to places, it breeds a certain energy into a place. And the GA is one of the very uniquely placed organisations to really add to the value of people's lives in country and in rural areas. So I think that definitely divestment in the trappings of the elite game, and a movement towards increasing energy and increasing time and increasing focus and increasing sponsorship, or whatever it is, TV deals or whatever, moving more and more towards the club in terms of focus, gives local areas, gives small towns and villages more of a reason to be. And when you've got young fellas then, 23, 24, if I see them in Ventry and they're out running, like, I know the old lads in the area, like, I know that they love to see that, like, they love to see the young fellas out, because it means that they've stayed, it means that they're here, and that gives them, it impacts the whole community. When you go for a run, you're not going training, like, you're not going, that's what you think you're going training, but you don't realize that every window that you pass and every body you pass along the way is looking with joy in their heart at the fact that you're there. Yeah. And that's like, this is when looking at where we are in the context of the last year, that kind of stuff. Like, the other stuff is fallen, the lattes have fallen away quick enough, like, but that stuff, that's the gold, man. That's the gold. And so how do we cultivate and create it? By conversations like this, definitely. But also yourself and Owen getting out for a few pucks, or yourself and whoever you want to getting out for a few pucks and organising those games and doing it. And if enough people start doing it, then more and more will follow.
It's true. It's true. Diarmuid, always great to talk to you. Congratulations on the new baby. Hope everything's well, and I hope your whole family is well. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks, Jar. Lovely. Take care. See ya. Slán on.
Diarmuid Lyng giving us some thoughts on the future of Irish sport. OTB Future is the hashtag that we're filing all this stuff under. If you want to give us some thoughts on that, we'd love to hear them.